Reisman's compliments, sir. You prefer to be captured or destroyed?
The Dirty Dozen, Hollywood's toughest men, and the tragedy they couldn't escape. They were murderers, rapists, thieves, dead men walking. And the U.S. Army gave them one impossible shot at redemption. 12 men. One suicide mission. That was the pitch. What we got was a war epic that redefined violence, camaraderie, and anti-hero storytelling forever. The Dirty Dozen, 1967, didn't just kick down cinematic doors, it exploded through them. It was raw. It was brutal. And it was stacked with some of the biggest names of the era. Lee Marvin, the real-life war vet with a voice like gravel and a soul carved from combat. Charles Bronson, fresh from the Magnificent Seven, cold, silent, and deadly. Telly Savalas, the sadistic psychopath who terrified everyone, on and off screen. Jim Brown, the NFL god turned screen legend, caught between two worlds. Ernest Borgnine. Donald Sutherland. Robert Ryan. Richard Jaeckel. The cast list alone is enough to leave a crater. But behind the uniforms, behind the blood and grit, was a darker story. These weren't just fictional warriors. They were real men, with real demons. And one by one, the bullets started to fly in real life too. Some died in silence. Others in scandal. And a few, never found peace after the cameras stopped rolling. So what happened to the men of the Dirty Dozen? What did they survive, and what did they lose? This is not just about war. This is about legacy, pain, pride, and how some of Hollywood's toughest men were quietly destroyed by their own legends. Welcome to the Dirty Dozen. And the final roll call they never got to answer. Lee Marvin, the veteran who never left the battlefield. In the Dirty Dozen, Major John Reisman was a walking contradiction. Gruff, insubordinate, insufferable. But exactly the kind of man you'd want on your side in a hopeless mission. And Lee Marvin didn't have to act. Because long before he ever stepped in front of a camera, he'd already seen hell. In real life. Born in 1924 in New York, Marvin served in the U.S. Marine Corps during World War II. He fought in the Battle of Saipan, where he was shot in the back and foot, and nearly died. He watched friends get torn apart in front of him. He killed men before he was old enough to legally drink. That trauma? It never left him. It soaked into every role he ever played. And Hollywood loved him for it. After the war, Marvin stumbled into acting. His face, hard and angular like a shattered jaw, made him the perfect villain. But soon, he became a star. The Killers. The Big Heat. Point Blank. Then came the Dirty Dozen, where he commanded the screen with authentic authority. You believed him. Because it wasn't pretend. Off-screen. He was just as volatile. He drank. A lot. He brawled in bars. He wrecked marriages. He burned bridges faster than he built them. He lived like he fought, recklessly, unapologetically, destructively. By the 80s, Marvin was slowing down, but the damage had been done. Years of smoking, drinking, and emotional torment took their toll. In 1987, he died of a heart attack in Tucson, Arizona. He was 63 years old. But even in death, he remained a monument. A soldier. A star. A man who bled both on screen and off. Lee Marvin didn't act like a broken warrior. He was one. And every line he spoke in the Dirty Dozen came not from a script, but from a memory he wished he could forget. Charles Bronson, the quiet fury who carried war in his bones. You already know him. From the Magnificent Seven, from Death Wish, from that hard stare that could silence a room. But in the Dirty Dozen, Charles Bronson brought something colder. Darker. He played Joseph Ladislaw, a convict, a killer, a man with a quiet code of justice. He wasn't loud. He wasn't eager. But when it came time to pull the trigger, he didn't blink. And that was pure Bronson. Born Charles Buchinski in 1921, in the coal mines of Pennsylvania, Bronson grew up in poverty so brutal, he once wore his sister's dress to school because he had no clothes of his own. He was the 11th of 15 children. He didn't speak English until he was a teenager. He worked in the mines from age 16. Then came World War II, where Bronson served in the Army Air Forces as an aerial gunner, flying over 25 missions. So when he stepped onto the set of The Dirty Dozen, wearing that scowl and that silence, he didn't have to imagine war. He had lived it. Hollywood made him a legend, but never a darling. He was too hard. Too ethnic. Too quiet. Too angry. And so he became the icon of vengeance. A man who looked like he'd been betrayed too many times to ever smile again. He married British actress Jill Ireland, and when she died of breast cancer, something in Bronson died too. In his later years, he vanished from public life. The body got weaker. The mind followed. He was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and it slowly erased everything, except the stare. On August 30, 2003, Charles Bronson died of pneumonia at age 81. No final interview. No dramatic last film. Just a legend, slipping quietly into the dark. But make no mistake. Bronson didn't play tough guys. He was one. And in The Dirty Dozen, every step he took toward that final mission felt like it came from a man who already knew what it meant to never come back. Telly Savalas, the charming monster who smiled all the way to the end. He played Archer Maggot. A convicted rapist, a religious zealot, and a man so twisted, even the other killers in the unit were afraid of him. And Telly Savalas? He made that role unforgettable. He didn't just act crazy. He radiated it, that mix of seductive charm and barely restrained rage. When he smiled, you winced. When he prayed, you wanted to run. Born in 1922 to Greek immigrants in New York, Savalas was as intense in real life as he was on screen. He served in World War II, studied psychology, and stumbled into acting by accident. First as a director, then as a character actor. And what a character he was. By the 1960s, he was Hollywood's go-to guy for sinister, intelligent villains. Bald head. Piercing eyes. Cigar in hand. He didn't play intimidating, he was intimidating. After The Dirty Dozen, he skyrocketed. But not for more madmen. For justice. Because in 1973, he shaved off the last bit of hair, popped a lollipop in his mouth, and became Lieutenant Theo Kojak. TV's most unlikely sex symbol. Kojak ran for years. He won an Emmy, hosted talk shows, recorded music albums in Europe, yes, really, and became a global icon. But the public never saw what came after. Savalas loved life, food, wine, women, fame. But the lifestyle caught up. He developed bladder cancer, then prostate cancer. The body that once intimidated studios began to break down. He kept smiling through it. Kept appearing in films. But behind the scenes, the end was closing in. On January 22, 1994, Telly Savalas died at the Sheraton Hotel in Universal City, California. The very hotel where he had lived for 2 decades. He was 72. No spotlight. No final line. Just silence, from the loudest man in every room. But don't forget this. He took the darkest role in The Dirty Dozen. And made it shine. Because Telly Savalas didn't just steal scenes. He hijacked them. And even when death came calling, he left behind that grin. The one that said, "Who loves ya, baby?" Jim Brown, the warrior who beat the system, but not time. In The Dirty Dozen, he played Robert Jefferson. A man of few words and unshakable focus. A black soldier facing the worst of war, racism, and institutional betrayal. And when it came time to run that final grenade sprint, he didn't just act it. He owned it. Because Jim Brown was never playing. He was always competing. Born in 1936, Brown grew up on Long Island and became a high school legend in every sport. Then came Syracuse University, and he didn't just make history. He rewrote it. In 1957, he entered the NFL and became what many still call the greatest football player of all time. Power. Grace. Rage. He didn't run past defenders. He ran through them. But just when the league thought they owned him, he walked. At age 30, in the prime of his career, Brown retired from the NFL while filming The Dirty Dozen. He didn't ask permission. He didn't explain. He just chose Hollywood over helmets. And it worked. He became a new kind of black leading man. Strong. Sexual. Defiant. No butler roles. No stereotypes. Jim Brown played men who took what they wanted, because no one was going to give it to them. Off-screen, he was even louder. Activist. Mentor. Disruptor. He stood with Muhammad Ali against the draft. He founded programs to stop gang violence. He spoke his mind, even when it cost him work. But his story wasn't without shadows. He faced multiple accusations of violence against women, some dismissed, some settled. The same fury that made him great made him dangerous. In later years, he found peace, mentoring youth, reflecting, aging into elder statesman status. On May 18, 2023, Jim Brown died peacefully at home. He was 87. No tragedy. No scandal. Just the quiet ending of a man who lived louder than most men dare. Jim Brown didn't follow anyone's rules. He made his own, in sports, in film, in life. And when he ran that final sprint in The Dirty Dozen, grenades in hand, you knew. He never stopped running. Ernest Borgnine, the grinning bulldog who never really left the fight. He played General Wardens. The blunt, no-nonsense military man who gave the orders and expected results. No patience. No sugarcoating. Just war. And Ernest Borgnine. He didn't just look like a bulldog. He was one. Born Ernest Borgnine in 1917 to Italian immigrants, he didn't come from money. He came from grit. He served 10 years in the U.S. Navy, fighting in World War II. Just like Marvin. He saw the ocean turn red. He watched boys become bodies. And when the war ended, he didn't run to Hollywood. He stumbled into it. And then he shocked the world. In 1955, Borgnine starred in Marty, a small, emotional film about a shy, lonely butcher looking for love. It was the opposite of a war film. And for it, he won the Academy Award for Best Actor. A former sailor. An unglamorous face. An Oscar winner. After that, he never stopped. War movies. Westerns. Comedies. Cartoons. He did it all. With that unmistakable voice, that gap-toothed smile, that infectious energy. In The Dirty Dozen, he was the old-school soldier. The one who got the mission, even when it made no sense. And that fit him perfectly. He didn't care about fame. He cared about work. And he worked until the very end. He voiced Mermaid Man on SpongeBob SquarePants. He made appearances in films, TV, even late-night shows. He lived to entertain. He lived to fight. He lived to live. And then, in 2012, at the age of 95, he passed away. After more than 60 years in Hollywood. Quiet. Dignified. Still smiling. No scandals. No breakdowns. Just a full, hard-fought life. Ernest Borgnine never pretended to be a hero. He already was one. And in the Dirty Dozen, when he barked those orders, you didn't just believe him. You respected him. Because behind that weathered face was a man who'd already seen the worst of war. And came back with nothing but heart. Robert Ryan, the gentleman warrior who couldn't escape his own darkness. In the Dirty Dozen, he played Colonel Everett Dasher Breed. A tight-lipped, by-the-book officer who resented the mission, and the men tasked with it. He was sharp. Controlled. Dangerous in his restraint. And Robert Ryan? He was all of that, and more. Born in 1909 in Chicago, Ryan came from an upper-middle-class background, went to Dartmouth College, and boxed competitively. He looked like a golden boy. But inside, there was rage. Conflict. Compassion. During World War II, Ryan served in the U.S. Marine Corps, but he never romanticized it. He hated fascism. Hated violence. Hated injustice. And yet, Hollywood kept casting him as violent men. Racists. Murderers. Psychopaths. Because he did it so well. In films like Crossfire, 1947, he played a vicious bigot. In Bad Day at Black Rock, he oozed menace. He was terrifying. Because he understood that evil doesn't scream. It whispers. But off-screen, Ryan was deeply political. He supported civil rights. Spoke against McCarthyism. Donated to progressive causes. He was a man at war with his own image. He once said, "I'm not a tough guy, but I play them well." And he played them until the very end. In the early 1970s, Ryan was diagnosed with lung cancer. A brutal sentence for a man who had spent his career embodying strength. But he didn't stop working. His final performance came in The Iceman Cometh, a 4-hour film about lost souls and broken dreams. He died just before the film was released, on July 11, 1973, at age 63. There were no headlines. No dramatic send-off. Just another quiet departure. From a man who never needed noise to make his presence known. Robert Ryan didn't play heroes. He played men who were unraveling. And maybe that's what made him so haunting. Because in the Dirty Dozen, when he looked at the mission with disgust, he wasn't just acting. He was asking a question. What if the real enemy is the one who gave the order? Richard Jaeckel, the unsung warrior who fought until he couldn't fight anymore. He played Sergeant Clyde Bowen. Lee Marvin's right-hand man. Quiet. Loyal. Lethal. A soldier's soldier. And that's exactly who Richard Jaeckel was. In the Dirty Dozen, in Hollywood, and in life. Born in 1926 in Long Beach, California, Jaeckel stumbled into acting as a teenager delivering mail on the Fox studio lot. At just 17, he was cast in Guadalcanal Diary, 1943. And for the next 5 decades, he never stopped working. He wasn't the leading man. He wasn't the box office draw. But he was the guy directors called when they needed grit. The wiry frame. The weathered face. The intensity that burned quietly just beneath the surface. The Dirty Dozen wasn't his biggest role. But it was his most visible. The moment the world saw what he'd been giving for years. Truth. Toughness. Unshakable commitment. In the 1970s and 80s, he found a second wind in war films, westerns, and TV. He received an Oscar nomination for Sometimes a Great Notion, 1971. But he never bragged. Never slowed down. Then, the fight turned inward. In the 1990s, Jaeckel was diagnosed with cancer. Medical bills mounted. He was placed in a care facility, reportedly unable to afford treatment despite decades of work. Hollywood had moved on. But he never stopped being a soldier. He died on June 14, 1997, at the age of 70. No scandals. No award shows in his honor. Just the slow fate of a man who gave everything to the camera. And got very little back. But we remember. Because Richard Jaeckel made every moment count. He made every war feel real. And in the Dirty Dozen, he was the heart that never stopped beating. Until it finally, quietly did. They were criminals. They were killers. They were the last men you trust with a mission. But on that screen, they became brothers. The Dirty Dozen wasn't just a war film. It was a cinematic riot. Violent. Unapologetic. Legendary. 12 condemned men turned heroes for one final suicide run. But when the cameras stopped rolling, the war didn't end. Lee Marvin, the real-life soldier whose demons followed him home. Charles Bronson, the cold-eyed executioner who aged into silence. Telly Savalas, the madman who made us laugh, and then disappeared behind a grin. Jim Brown, the warrior who outran the NFL, Hollywood, and nearly time itself. Ernest Borgnine, the bulldog who never stopped barking, until he quietly faded at 95. Robert Ryan, the haunted soul who played racists and killers, while fighting for justice in real life. Richard Jaeckel, the forgotten fighter who gave everything and died with barely a whisper. These men didn't just play soldiers. They carried real wounds. They made the violence believable. Because for some of them, it never really ended. They weren't glamorous. They weren't perfect. But they were magnificent in their imperfection. And now, they're gone. One by one. Another dozen, laid to rest. But when we press play, when the bullets start flying, when that final grenade falls, they live again. So this isn't just a tribute. It's a final roll call. To the men who fought. On screen. Off screen. And in every battle Hollywood never saw. Gone. But never forgotten.